It's not black or white. 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 With Tim Stevenson and Diane Blakely. Not black or white. It's not black or white. With Tim Stevenson and Diane Blakely.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of It's Not Black or White. We are your hosts, Tim Stevenson.
And Diane Blakely.
And today we have a special guest, but I'm going to let you do the intro.
Oh, I'm super excited about this because Mike Smilo has been very generous in letting me bother him on Instagram for months. And then finally I get this wonderful opportunity because honestly, Mike has like a story. So our podcast is all about, inspiring stories where people, take really interesting journeys. And also it's an opportunity for us to let other people know some of the fascinating things that are happening, not just here in the United States, but outside of the country. And, everybody knows that I had breast cancer. So, they're no stranger to hearing a little bit about that. But your story and your journey with cancer is unlike anything else I've heard from anyone. And I have talked to literally thousands of people about their journey. And your journey is one that I think needs to be shared to other people. I think you could actually do something really positive and really helpful to other people, not just here in the United States, but elsewhere. So I'm going to stop talking because my husband has told me that I need to learn to be a little better about that after listening.
Her husband loves me, by the way, because she puts those words in my direction and then he gets less words.
Yeah, Tim's taking the slack a little bit lately, but I would like to stop and kind of like have you talk, Mike, about like the day you were diagnosed, how, that happened, and then ultimately the journey that you and Bethany took in terms of finding treatment, because it is very different from anything else I've heard. So with that, I'm going to stop and I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike, and do what my husband says, listen better.
Well, listen, I need to learn that myself, so she tries to get me to listen better.
Yeah.
I'm the talker in this relationship, but a lot of it is, and you went through this and you've noticed, I lost a lot of my memory and hopefully it comes back soon. But after the treatment, and the reason why is the TCR that I had, the cell therapy, well, it's a good thing, I'd say, for many reasons, but it actually attacked the brain cancer that I had. I mean, start with melanoma. I had cancer in my brain. It was active, but at that time, no one really knew that there was active brain cancer that I had. So after the TCR, the actual T cells attacked. I don't know, you can probably dive in more.
So, I mean, he doesn't remember he didn't even remember he had cancer, honestly. So I can kind of tell you a little bit more about the beginning, since he only knows from what I told him. So, this was started probably in October 2025. I was 8 months pregnant at the time, very big. We had a 2-year-old toddler running around, and Mike would be like, my shoulder hurts, or, he's like, my nose is like a little stuffy. So these certain things would pop up where he would then go to like the emergency room and they would get an x-ray and they would send him home and say, it's arthritis. And then he's like, it still hurts. He would go to the orthopedic and they're like, stop doing push-ups, you need 8 weeks of physical therapy before we get you a scan. Then he couldn't breathe out of his nose. He went to the ENT. They did a CT scan. They said, oh, looks like you have a polyp in your nose. In November that year, he went to the dermatologist. He had some small lumps on his back, and she goes, oh, it's a cyst. Let's keep an eye on it. But she did a biopsy of a couple moles on him. They came back great. So finally, in this end of November, we had our baby, our little girl, our second baby. And as time went on, he started getting these nosebleeds. He was really, really tired all the time, as was I, right? We had a newborn baby. So like, the focus wasn't really on him, right? So he's just like, we're working a lot. We have this new baby. I'm getting really tired. Finally, we heard another referral for another orthopedic surgeon that Mike went to. And he's like, listen, my shoulders are hurting. My femurs are kind of starting to hurt. He's like, this is not normal. He's like, let's get you a scan immediately. So it was a doctor that, we appreciated so much. It was the first person that listened to him and took him seriously. Lo and behold, the scans came back and showed that he had something called bone edema, which is fluid in your bones. And he brought him in and he's like, listen, this is cancer. Through another friend, the next day we went to an emergency room where he got a full body CT scan. He's like, you're fine, whatever. The results came back to him first before the doctors, and it showed, 70 plus lesions on his liver, his kidney, his lungs, all over his body, covered in melanoma. I still remember that phone call to this day. And this was President's Day weekend in January 2025. So, this was a Saturday morning. That means obviously everything's closed on Monday. So the next step we had was to get the biopsy to find out what cancer it was. So we kind of did everything backwards. Usually you're at a doctor, they biopsy you to find out if it's cancer. We found out it was cancer first, but had no idea what it was. So, through a connection, we got into Sloan that very week, and got a biopsy done and found out it came back as melanoma, which we suspected. He had melanoma in 2013. It was less than a 5% chance of spreading, and it came back with a vengeance at that time. And Mike, at any point in the story, you want to jump in or
go right ahead. You're doing a good job.
Well, she's doing a great job for sure. That's a lot of information to keep sorted out. Can I ask you a question? So did they biopsy like a mole or something, and that's what they said wasn't like melanoma, and then they came back and what else did they biopsy that suddenly made it like, oh my gosh, you have cancer? Was it the fluid in the bone test that said, hey, there's this is what that is? Or
the MRI? So when that orthopedic surgeon finally took the MRI of his shoulders and his femurs, he saw fluid in the bones, and fluid in the bones is called bone edema. And when you have it in all these cases, to him, he's seen enough cases where he was able to determine this is, with pretty much certainty, this is cancer, which then indicated us to get that scan done.
And they didn't know that it was necessarily melanoma at that point. They just knew that that's a symptom of having cancer.
And, again, we're fortunate because of Mike's network and everyone he knows. He had an uncle that used to work at a hospital, and he's like, listen, the way this spread throughout your body, it's one of three types of cancer. It's either melanoma, prostate, or one other one. So we knew melanoma was a contender, and then knowing he had it in 2013, we pretty much put the pieces together, that's what it would be. So we kind of had an idea before we had the official biopsy done.
I just think it's so fascinating because it was funny. I was in a group chat with several thousand women, and they were all talking about itching, like cancer made them itch, and I never itched. So, and it may have been because of the stage of my cancer, but with you, I wondered if there was any itching, or if it was just because it sounds like it presented itself like it hurt, like you needed to see an orthopedic, like you hurt your shoulder or something. So
he was in pain.
Okay.
Itching, he had a little bit of side effects of immunotherapy. Itching was one of them. But with the cancer, his body was in pain. He was exhausted, like so tired. And I know a lot of people are tired. I don't want people to think I'm tired of cancer, but he was like beyond like exhausted. And just like his body just like really hurt. He felt like he dislocated his shoulder. He was in like severe pain. So for him to have to go to an emergency room is like a severe pain situation.
Wow,
of course, during that time we had the babies. So, I'm not sitting here complaining when we're running tons of businesses and we have the babies. I'm carrying them around, and not as much as I should. And, and a lot of the stresses with everything we've got working. So I was dismissing it, but also the doctors wasn't really being taken seriously at that point. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because fatigue seems to be like a really big component, regardless of the kind of cancer. Like I thought I had COVID long hauler, and now I think I had cancer growing. And my body was like, I would tell my friends, I'm an athletic person, and I would say, we'd walk up a hill and I'd be like, have to stop halfway. And I said, I'm so tired. I want to lay down. That's how tired I am. I could lay down right by my mailbox. In fact, I did at one point. I just laid by the mailbox and people were driving by. Are you okay? I was like, yeah, I just need to sleep this off, and I kept blaming it on COVID exposure, but I think it was actually cancer. But I didn't know, I didn't have any idea. So,
well, to your point, again, this is secondhand, but my friends were telling me that I was literally laying down a lot and I was like in pain just sitting there. And in hindsight, it sounds so obvious, I guess now, right? In hindsight, because I was in pain everywhere. but arthritis was the key. It was like, yeah, you have arthritis. Because I dislocated my shoulder in wrestling years ago. Like, yeah, it's arthritis. Stop doing push-ups. I mean, literally, this is what I was hearing by people.
They do go to arthritis. They told me I had rheumatoid arthritis.
Oh, they
That's
did?
hilarious. Yes. But I didn't. They scanned my hands for like 2 hours at this special place, like literally ultrasounded my hands, both of them. And then they're like, yep, it's rheumatoid. And it was so, then they found out, no, it's not. But it wasn't until they put me on a year drug that they realized, oh, you shouldn't be taking that. You don't actually have it. So I always say get second and third opinions, because doctors are just, it's funny. I had an acupuncturist. I was a little bit, miffed about it. And I said, gosh, I go to doctors to get help. And it's like they mess up. And he said, it's because they're humans, Diane. They're just regular people. That's what they do for their living. And so they're trying to gather all their information. And sometimes they gather the wrong stuff. It points to something else that it could likely be, but then they're wrong, So anyway, I digress, but.
No, but that's what you just said on the nail is kind of what our foundation is about, is getting second, third, fourth, fifth opinions, because everybody's human. What's good right now, and I did have, a little angst towards some of the hospitals that dismiss my my pains, but what Bethany always reminds me is that we're still helping these institutions. Some of these large institutions now they're also interested in my case.
Okay, we're back. So what we were talking about was how my acupuncturist. I would cry to him and I would tell him, Doc, I'm like, this is what I actually said. I'm like Humpty Dumpty and nobody can put me back together again. And he would say, Diane, doctors are just people. They're trying to figure it out, because I was kind of soured on the idea at the time. And I'm like, they're not helping me. And so with that, I think maybe you had like an experience where you were a little bit like concerned about, because you put your trust, I think, into doctors that I think most people do, that they're the end all be all, that they know what they're doing. And a lot of times they're figuring it out.
Right.
But I think if you don't, and this is, Mike and I've talked about the word advocate, how advocate's like a big word. Like, are you advocating for yourself? They used to say that to me, the doctors would, and aren't you supposed to be doing that? But if you don't take it in your own hands, a lot of times you miss the opportunities. And certainly if you think it's about your life, and with that, I think you probably thought that, and you guys started going on that journey to try to figure out how to help Mike with the cancer. Because in respect to you, you had, I think, a much more difficult, all cancer is difficult, but I think you had a much more extreme thing happening to you because it had metastasized, right? Other areas. So
yeah, well, it also metastasized. Well, I had LMD, so the prognosis is really poor because you throw in metastasized. But with LMD is an area that I'm relearning it again. But it's like there's not, I don't know about. There's another survivor I speak to of LMD, but there's not really any documented survivors out there. There's not many. So this is a pretty big deal, because originally, I guess when we were looking at TCR therapy too, I wasn't exactly the ideal candidate because I had LMD, so I was excluded from trials.
What's LMD stand for? Do you mind me asking?
So it's leptomeningeal disease. So basically, it's when the cancer, it's usually in severe cases of cancer. It's usually in melanoma, breast, or lung cancer. There's a few other types of cancer that it can occur. And it's when the cancer travels into your spinal fluid, and then that allows the cancer to go on the meninges on your brain. So it's like your brain lining or on your spinal cord. So Mike's cancer, so it's very hard to treat these cancers that are in fluid. And to take it further, your spinal cord doesn't really have, or your spinal fluid doesn't really have immune cells. So for immunotherapy to cross the blood-brain barrier and then survive in this atmosphere is like almost like pretty much unheard of. So that's why it's so hard to treat. And then with radiation, you can't really target a moving, a liquid cancer with radiation. So there's very little treatment options, if any, there's none that will actually are known to cure this.
So chemo doesn't work at all either.
No, chemo is not known to work on melanoma actually at all. Or, if it does, it's a very, very small percentage. So when Mike was in severe progression, his doctor offered him chemo. It's called a bridging tool. So maybe if we give you chemo, it can keep you okay until we have this next treatment available for you. So chemo is definitely not known to work in melanoma specifically at all.
But it's so funny they seem to use it all the time. Like, didn't Teddy Mellencamp, she had melanoma, and they gave her tons of chemo.
I think she had radiation and immunotherapy. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. From what I remember from her Instagram.
Okay, because I know she didn't have hair, so I always associate that with chemo. But I definitely, like with the kind of cancer that I had, it's called a cold cancer, and so your immune system has trouble seeing it, and unless it's mutating really fast, chemo won't see it either. But they want a chemo like every person they get their hands on, even if it doesn't seem like it's gonna work. I had a doctor say, if I have a cold cancer and you give me chemo, why would you chemo me if you know it's not gonna work? And they said, just in case. Well, just in case what? And that's what really made me start to realize, that you have to kind of go outside your own sort of sphere of doctors and start looking. And I was hoping you guys could tell us a little bit in generalities how you ended up in Germany, because you tried all the stuff they would offer, right, in the US, which sounds like it was limited to begin with.
Yeah, you go right.
So, once we started kind of learning more about, the cancer, we had the first, we spoke to, many doctors. And since we have this like business background, we are, always looking for second and third opinions, and always, we always try to reach our goals. We do it. And it's just the people that we happen to be. And Mike has a really big network. So we're always talking to people and always trying different things to see what works. So that's kind of, I think, kind of bred within us. So when we spoke to our first doctor, within the next week, after that, we were at Sloan. The very next week, we flew to Mayo Clinic. We connected that doctor with our doctor. They're two top melanoma oncologists to actually speak and discuss like what was going on with Mike. At that point, this is a whole other story, but the Mayo Clinic gave us a sample of this targeted medication for Mike, which Sloan does not carry samples. We didn't know if he had this certain mutation yet that the sample would help. If he did have the mutation, the doctor basically said, just take this, because Mike was so bad at that point. They're like, just take this. So we just started taking the medication. Lo and behold, he had this mutation. Within days, his tumors were shrinking. This medication was a temporary fix. We knew it only lasts about a year before the cancer outsmarts it. So we had, connected Mayo Clinic doctor with our doctor at Sloan. They talked. Our doctor was like, thank you for introducing me to him. It's great when, these minds connect. 1 month later, in March of that year, we flew to MD Anderson. MD Anderson has the leading oncologist for LMD, for melanoma. We met with her. We then connected her with our doctor at Sloan. Our doctor at Sloan wanted us to get off this targeted medication to see if the immunotherapy was working, because immunotherapy takes a little bit longer to kick in, where this leading expert at Mayo Clinic said, absolutely not. Your cancer will grow wildly if you do that. So they spoke and agreed on a plan. From there, through Mike's network, we were introduced to, scientists, people at AstraZeneca, people in China with emerging therapies, friends of doctors of treatments not available within the US. So at this time, Mike was doing pretty good. We were cruising, and then we heard something called a Signatera test. So this was from a connection we met this doctor at Washington University. He definitely had a little bit more of a scientific approach, and was the first doctor we met that didn't just jump to standard of care. So he introduced us to this test. It's called Signatera by Natera, which, especially in stage 4 cancers, you can track if you have circulating tumor cells in your blood. And this is an early indication if your cancer might be spreading. So you want to really look for the trends over time. So Mike started getting this blood test. We brought it to our doctor at Sloan, who was like, I don't know if this is going to work. If you guys want to try it, okay, I'll order it for you. So we started doing the Signatera test. His circulating tumor cells came up as 0 in May of 2025, which we were like, yay, amazing. This is so good. But as he kept on taking the test, they started rising. So that gave us an indication something was going on. This test is not 100% accurate. It's still being tested, but it is approved by oncologists. They use it. So this was our first indication that something was going on. Then, eventually when he got scanned again in November of 2025, we did start seeing a little bit of progression in his bones. At that time, our doctor recommended something called cell therapy, which is another type of cell therapy. They take some of your tumor, they extract it, they grow something for like 5 weeks, and they inject it back into you. At this time, we were seeking the next opinion. So we're like, if we're switching a systemic therapy, we need to make sure it's the right one. So we spoke to the scientific doctor at Washington U. He was the first person that asked, and please stop me at any point if I'm going too fast.
Oh, no, I'm
fine.
so fascinated by this. I can't
so he was the first doctor that asked to see Mike's genomic sequencing. And we were like, what is that? We've never heard of that. So basically, it's a report. When they initially took his biopsy in January 2025, they automatically sent it out for genomic sequencing. So genomic sequencing takes your tumor tissues and looks for specific biomarkers in your tumor. If I have lung cancer and Mike has lung cancer, we both have lung cancer, but our tumors could look completely different. And this is how people are finding these targeted approaches that will be more likely to work on you than sometimes in standard of care. So this was the first doctor and the first time we've ever heard of genomic sequencing. Lo and behold, we looked at Mike's files and the genomic sequencing report existed. He took a look at it and he's like, I see something called your HLA type. He's like, this could be for potential treatments that are going out. I also see that you could be eligible for something called a PARP inhibitor, which is another standard of care. One of your mutations is similar to something people in breast cancer have. I think it's called the BRCA1 gene. He's like, the PARP inhibitor can make that targeted medication actually work longer on you. So not only did he find potential trials from looking at this, he also found standard of cares that he could be using in conjunction to extend the life of these targeted medications he's on. Our next step was we were introduced to Mike's friend from high school, Bijou. So Bijou is a scientist. He's a professor at Harvard and Rutgers and really focuses on early detection. He focuses on these stem cell therapies and how he works and how they work. So with all this information, we went to Bijou and we said, listen, our options are TIL therapy. We've heard about this HLA thing and genomic sequencing and blah, blah, blah. He's like, send me everything that you have. We sent him all the information. He said, listen, TIL therapy is not going to work on you. There's no reason to think with this type of treatment that if XYZ couldn't get into your bones, that this TIL therapy is getting in your bones. He said, with the HLA type, I found this trial. He's like, this is the treatment that you need. This, based on all the research studies he's done, he took a deep dive into the science behind it and Mike's specific biology. And he's like, this is what will work on you. We went to our doctor and he goes, that he's right, that will work on you, but you're not eligible for the trial. Lo and behold, really? We went back and he found a trial that we were eligible for. We went back to our doctor. He goes, you're right, you actually are eligible for this one, but the wait is 1 year out. During this time, Mike was going through radiation and his symptoms were getting worse and worse. He had fluid starting to build up in his stomach. And the doctor's like, that's a side effect of radiation. Don't worry. 3 or 4 more times, we said, listen, there's fluid building up in his stomach. Like, what's going on? They're like, no, like, you know what? Let's get you an x-ray. This was a month later. Got an x-ray. The x-ray came back. Nothing's going on. The next day, Mike couldn't even get out of bed. So I was like, go to the emergency room. And they did a CAT scan. Cancer everywhere, again, spread all over. It's called ascites within your stomach that was building up this fluid. So we took all the information we had. We knew that, we had to get into this trial and we couldn't for 1 year. We found a way through some friends and connections to actually find this hospital in Germany that was conducting the trial. We had asked our doctor to reach out to them and they were gracious enough and amazing enough people to accept Mike. And then in 2 weeks, we were out there getting the treatment.
Wow.
That is completely amazing.
Is there an eligibility issue in the US versus Germany for the same trial?
So in Germany, it's not actually a trial. They were taking him as like a scientific patient. So his data will not be part of the trial. It's shared with like the company and everything like that, but he wasn't technically in a trial. He's more so like a scientific patient.
So, I mean, that's a pretty big deal to like you must, your wife is quite amazing, Mike. Because she's like, you're getting to stay here on the earth with me.
I'm like, I'm not watching these kids by myself for the rest of her life.
She's like, no. Yeah, it's amazing because I know like what my husband did for me. I mean, he's my best friend and I know exactly what he went through, but I didn't know till I came out of surgery, like how it was impacting him. So, lots of hats off to you, Bethany, because I know that being a mom to little ones and then having your husband not doing well and then having to try to find all this stuff out, because I know when you have cancer, and I don't know if this is the same for you, Mike, but it's like my frontal cortex just shut down. I couldn't remember what people were saying to me. And I would cry to my husband. I would tell him, oh my gosh, I know they were talking to me. I didn't take notes. And he would tell me, don't worry, I took notes. I know what they want us to do. But again, what you guys did was just another step outside of that. Like when the doctors are like saying, they can't help you. What happened? What made you, and who decided? Was it you, Bethany? Was it Mike, or you guys together? Like, we're not going to take what they're telling us here in the US as gospel. We're going to go outside that. How did that actually happen? Because I think that's a big deal. I mean, I tested my own tumor here in the US, which I thought I'm the only patient that's ever been at home that has double tested my tumor. Most people don't do it. But what you guys did is a step way beyond what I did.
I would start with you have to be self-motivated yourself, and we can only do so much to motivate other people. We have people coming to us every day, thousands of people, and we can help people, but they have to be self-motivated as well. You cannot get them to change our mindset, right? So we have mindsets. I mean, we're business people, but right at heart, ever since college, I always was breaking down barriers. I wasn't the smartest guy. I didn't have good SAT scores, but I always networked and got my way in. That was how I was made up. So I wasn't taking no for answers. I wasn't taking this is my death sentence. I never had that mindset. So I know that going into it, I knew I will find a way. Even if there isn't a way, we will find a way. And, Bethany too, she's a business runner. I mean, she runs stuff, and, her mentality too, she wasn't going to accept it as an answer. And I think you have to change your own mindset. No one could do it for you. And it's not just let's be real. With what I had in LMD, and you'll probably look it up later. I mean, it's a miracle. We just got off the call. We just got a message from MD Anderson. That's, we will let them know that, I'm feeling great. And they're just
here.
They're beside themselves. Yeah, they're beside themselves.
And I think something else too is obviously you can't get 100 opinions. So when to stop. And I don't know if this sounds silly or not, but something I really started to do during this journey is listening to my intuition. If it didn't feel right to me, then let's go. I need at least 3 people to agree this is the best solution. But do I need 10 or 15? No. So listening to your intuition and getting multiple parties to agree, I would never ever just trust one person, even if you trust that person with anybody. So when we had Bijou, Washington, you doctor, and Sloan all agreeing on this treatment, we knew, check, that's the one.
So how did they do?
And what fast forward to, just want to let you know, on our Smilo Foundation, on our board, is the doctor that helped save my life from Washington University. He's an oncologist, and it's kind of unheard of because this isn't something that most centers will push because it's not standards of care yet in the USA. But he did, but he's more clinical. So he's now on our board too, which gives us more credibility as well. And we have a team of panels. We have scientists on our team. It's incredible what we're building. And what we're trying to do, like you said too, Diane, it's a team effort, right? It's not one person effort. When you have a team of experts, we're trying to provide that team of experts for everybody. If we can make that and replicate that process that we went and eventually automate it, that's how it's going to change things.
This gets me super emotional. I feel a little bit teary because I think what you're doing, and certainly with, and you can talk a little bit about this with the Smilo Compass, that it's so important to people. It's so important to people across the board, right? It doesn't matter what you look like and, how you talk. None of that other stuff matters. What matters is that you give people an opportunity to find treatment so that they can live a long life, with their families. And so I am just particularly, I've, not that I'm an internet stalker, but I did follow you for quite some time, listening to you and the things that were happening. And I sent it to Tim, and I was like, Tim, this guy has to come on the podcast, because I know I'm supposed to meet this person. I know that he's supposed to get to as many people as he can through as many vehicles as he can, so that he can help other people. I just really feel it, like, through and through. And I'm just so grateful that you're talking about it, because I do think some random person is going to be watching, and they're going to be able to figure out a way to fight the disease that they have. Because a lot of people, like you and I've talked about, kind of just give up. I think it's really I think it's a fear-based thing, and I'm a little scrappy.
I think what you're saying too is, like, when Mike first got diagnosed, what kept us like going, knowing his prognosis, our doctor was just like, don't Google it. Don't Google what he has.
Right.
We started hearing about people with like stage 4 pancreatic cancer that have been alive for 15 years. We started hearing all these stories about these crazy survivals, and we're like, if they can do it, like, we're going to figure it out. So just finding these stories of hope, I think, is just so important. And, with the social media platform now, that's what we're trying to do. Like, we did it. We figured it out. You can do it too. And not only that, we're going to help you get there when our tool is ready.
Well, it's funny that you said that. They said, don't Google, because that's what I was told. In fact, I gave my oncology surgeon, a mug that said, don't mistake my years in medical school for Google. Don't mistake Google for
interesting.
Yeah, and I gave him that mug, because it was a big joke, because I'd go in and I'd have like this huge list of questions. What about this? What about that? And I have nothing but wonderful things to say about Dr. Lincoln Snyder. He is probably the best oncology surgeon. I have no visible scars from what he did. He's at the top of his craft, and he's a wonderful surgeon. He would call me on his hiking vacations and stuff to tell me, your margins are clear, you're okay, Doc, because I think he found me to be a little bit of an anomaly. A little bit like Mike and you, Bethany, wanting to know everything and stuff. But they definitely don't want you to research. And I don't know if you guys did this, but I think in one of our conversations, we might have talked a little bit about it. I dropped my pathology report into all the chat systems. And I can't take credit for that. I have to give credit to my husband, because he had been using ChatGPT a lot for other things. And I really haven't jumped in on that boat yet. Both he and Tim are ChatGPT kind of people that utilize the benefits of ChatGPT. But for me, dropping the pathology report gave me an opportunity to talk on a similar level to an oncologist, right? I certainly wouldn't say that I had all the schooling that they did, but it made me understand what the pathology report actually meant. And that helped me understand better on how to find ways to treat things. I had a unique situation, and they called me a gray area patient, which nobody wants to hear that. You're a gray area. Oh no.
What does that really mean?
Yeah. So what it meant to me was, you better get up and figure it out. So when I came to Mike, I was like, oh my God, he did what I did. They did exactly what I did. They were like, oh, heck to the no, I'm not doing that. And I'm not going anywhere either. To have somebody just make it sound so bleak, when the human body, like, I've got into a lot of other things about like how your brain and your soul play within the world of cancer, right? Like, I don't know, we talked a little bit about it, but like, I think if you're really super stressed, it signals to your body and your mitochondria to stop working efficiently and creates an immune system problem. I've been introduced to an oncologist who wrote a Pulitzer Prize winning book on how he thinks inflammation and your immune system are the two things that create cancer in the human body. And
what's interesting you bring it up is tonight we're going to do a post on the people transplant.
Oh, on your microbiome, yeah. So.
Have you heard of
second brain? Yeah.
Have you heard of Julie Stevenson? Have you heard of her, Julie Stevenson?
Who is it?
Julie Stevenson. She also had cancer, and she talks all about your biometrics, using technology to make your body inhospitable to cancer. I follow all her stuff, and she's quite fascinating. And she's figured out, mathematically and from statistics on how to keep her body free of it. They told her she was not going to live, and she's here, 10 plus years later. And she does a bunch of conferences on your microbiome and also like how you make, like I said, your body inhospitable to cancer. And
there was, in the post that we're going to do tonight, we were trying to say at Mike something. Have you guys heard of the fecal transplant?
Fecal transplant? No.
So we were, we do this like tiny health test, which basically tests your poop, right? To see what kind of bacteria. So you send it in, then you set up a call with a nutritionist and they kind of test it. So she was the first person that really brought this up to us because of how important your microbiome is. There's something actually called fecal transplants where they take the feces of somebody with an amazing microbiome and they somehow implant it with you, whether it's like a pill or whatever mechanism. So she gave us the idea and we brought it to her oncologist. She's like, listen, do it. He's like, there's no downside. Like, I'm not going to say no downside, but there's not much of a downside to it. Like, try. So, in a small study that they did, I think it was 16 people, the study size was 40% of people that stopped responding to immunotherapy started responding again after having a fecal transplant. So that's a pretty big deal. Like, it shows how powerful your microbiome is. So we're going to do kind of an awareness post on that tonight. Again, just to tie in ideas that you might not think about. And there's all these things out there that, start looking.
Is that in the U.S.? Yeah.
Yeah, the studies. I was in contact with MD Anderson. We recently spoke to a friend whose mother had pancreatic cancer. And he said, again, I don't think there's one for pancreatic right now. Again, remember, trials, they open and close all the time. So you have to know in the moment what's going on. But at the time, he said the most helpful treatment for his mother with pancreatic, who's tried so many treatments, was the fecal transplant.
Never heard of that. So you're the second, guest that we've had on where I've been introduced to something that I never heard of. I never heard of chelation.
Chelation, yeah.
I'd never heard of that either. And this gal that both Tim and I know, she survived double positive breast cancer. And 8 years later, she's in the dance class with me, jamming out.
Yeah. But she does this chelation where they take the metals out of your body.
Yeah. So
I've heard of that. I've heard of
a lot of people have been exposed to lead paint and things like that, and they get sick and they can't figure out why they are. And then they inject this fluid into the person's system and they basically urinate it out. But I'd never heard of that. And so I started Googling, does chemo have metal in it?
Is that an official trial, or is that more of a holistic treatment?
It's more of a holistic treatment. So she goes twice a month. And I'm telling you, if you saw this woman, she's kind of amazing. You could go through our podcast. She's this just absolutely beautiful blonde lady. And she takes a hip hop class that Tim teaches.
She does.
I love it.
There's a whole bunch of us former cancer people
in my class. Yeah.
in his class. But none of us knew it. We all were celebrating one of the gals' birthday. And somebody didn't eat the sugar. I don't deny myself a cupcake, but other people who've had cancer stay clear of sugar. And she said, oh no, I had cancer. And then somehow we all started talking. And there were 8 of us sitting at this table, and all of us had survived breast cancer, different levels of it, of course. But Orange County happens to be the largest breast cancer culmination in the country.
It's not black or white. 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 With Tim Stevenson and Diane Blakely. Not black or white. It's not black or white. With Tim Stevenson and Diane Blakely.